Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to discuss the third and the last topic of cultural safety. As we all know that Cmpa website give us a huge amount of good practice topics, which is basically giving us an idea how to understand the ethics as well as the ethical portion into the Canadian healthcare system, which is one of the very important part of our exam, which is QE1. In terms of this cultural safety, I have already uploaded two videos, which is in part 1 and part 2. You can have a look, and in that video you will find the introductions, you'll find the wide spectrum of the culture, you can find the dimension of the culture, and as well as you can find the communicating with the cultural sensitivity. Today I'm going to start reading the topic request based on cultural and or religious grounds. This will be the last topic of this good practice portion. There may be times when physicians' legal and professional duties to proceed in a certain manners will be at odds with the patient's desired approach to care. Despite potential cultural difference, all physicians practicing in Canada have an obligation to be truthful about all the aspect of the care, to provide the opportunity for informed consent, to disclose the patient safety incidents, and where appropriate to discuss the end of life issues. One thing which we have been discussing in the previous three portions, that as a physician we have to respect patient's culture. Yes, we do, but at the same time, as a working in a Canada, we do have some obligations which we have to follow for each and every patient, each and every person who comes for the care. So that will be one thing, is you have to be truthful about the aspect of the care. If someone is having a bad news, that means they are being diagnosed with a cancer, or they are being diagnosed with some life-threatening conditions, you have to let them know. You cannot hide the things because they will feel bad, or they might feel anxious or something. Maybe there might be circumstances when you have to put your diagnosis in a portion wise, maybe a step by step, but you have to be truthful whatever the care you are giving, whatever the diagnosis of the patient is. Number 2 is providing the opportunity for informed consent. As we all know, consent is a very important part of our life as a physician. Whenever we talk to a patient, we have to make sure that we are taking a consent. It could be implied consent, it could be express consent, it could be written consent, but there should be a concern for each and everything, especially the things which we feels it does not make a difference. Let's suppose an examination of the perineal area, examination of the breast for a female. You have to take in concerns. Even though they have a different cultural backgrounds, you still have to take the concerns before you proceed with the procedures or the examinations. To disclose the patient safety incident, that means you have to let them know if there is an incident happen, and you have to be appropriate to discuss an end of life issues. You have to be truthful to everybody, whatever the options is available. This is the obligation to be working in a Canadian healthcare system. But it doesn't mean that you are neglecting at some point of time the cultural differences, but you are trying to incorporate the cultural difference as well as the obligations together and providing a safe care to the patient. Patients may have differing expectations about receiving care based on their previous experience with the physicians in other contexts. Having a cross-cultural mindset, one that considers that people may view things differently and that welcome diversity, is the key of being purposefully inclusive and minimizing the risk of being accidentally exclusive. So when we say making a cross-cultural mindset, it's very helpful. That means you always put yourself in a situation that, okay, this patient is coming from a different background. Do I have a mindset to ask the questions, to clarify things, to get more insight about their cultural point of view? Because as a family physician, you are not looking for their patients for a one day, you are looking for their whole life. They have came to you at the age of 18, but they will be staying with you until the age of 80. So you need to make sure that you are trying to understand their cultural step by steps whenever it's needed, and that kind of a mindset is very helpful because you are putting everybody inclusive, not trying to exclude anyone. And the number 2 things which we studied before was the competencies is very important for us as working with the patients, building the relationship, trying to provide the care. So So these are the two things which is very important in our practice. Surfacing or managing your own biases is the first good step. Exploring diverse viewpoints and expectations with patients and colleagues alike may help you appreciate that some patients may, for example, expect a more parentalistic approach to the decision making. Doctor knows best, or may wish to have a bad news to be broken by the family member instead of a physician. Similarly, developing an understanding of the importance and significance of truth telling for different individuals can help you to design your approach, for example, diagnosis of terminal illness and end of life decision. So, here we are talking about our biases because everybody is having a kind of a bias which they feel that okay, this is going to be happen in these types of patients, this is going to happen in this type of group of people. So we have to manage our own biases, which is the very good step and the very first step. Secondly, you need to understand the cultural diversity and try to get the expectations from the patients and try to ask the questions. It will help you to give them a proper care, and because you never know if the patient is a decision maker or patient is just being like doctor knows everything, they are the best for us, they can make a decision whatever is good for us, right? Or sometimes the bad news broken is kind of a situation where every family members or every patient is not comfortable. They would say, oh, physician should not tell us what is happening, I think my wife or my father or my parents or my someone xyz can give me the news. This is also comes with the things, but you have to be truthful, you have to respect their culture, but you have to be truthful in telling yourself and telling the patients that what is the obligations which you need to do it, and you have to document it. Why I am emphasizing document? Because when we will read the topic of documents, you will understand very minor things. If you have documented it, that will save you for future, and that will help you to understand and everybody who is looking to your care how you approach the things. So that kind of a thing is very important. Similarly, relationship may have nurtured with an understanding that there are potential conflicts of values when cultural beliefs involve strong opinion regarding the role of women, respect for elders, or an individual's rights to choose, for example, autonomy. The right to the information, truthfulness, and patient-centered approaches are all central tenets for the healthcare delivery in Canada. Reasonable accommodation is the another key principle of practicing medicine in Canada. Developing a sound understanding for these various perspectives may help foster strong doctor-patient relationship that strikes an appropriate balance between treating patients like they want to be treated and practicing in accordance with the standard established by the regulated authorities. So this is basically telling us whenever you make a relationship, you have to understand that there could be a conflict, there could be a belief, there could be a cultural background to every individuals, and you have to respect that choice too. Autonomy, you know what is autonomy, like right to the informations. It's their information, they should know it if they want to. Truthfulness and patient-centered approach, these are all the things which we are practicing every day in our healthcare delivery system. But at this point of time, you have to be reasonable in terms of finding out what are the things understandable to that patient and how the relation should be go, and in what way we can treat the patient because they are coming from a different background. So these types of things, I know this is not going to be asked in our QE1 exam, but the only thing is you need to understand the answers in a way that you are not harming someone by providing the best care but actually neglecting their culture. Number 2, you are trying to be maximizing your practicing by respecting their values, their norms and cultures, but you are neglecting the obligation of being a physician in Canada. So you have to balance that part. Let's suppose if a family comes to you and there is a patient of 60 years old who is being newly diagnosed with the cancer, and the daughter is saying, oh doctor, please don't tell my father, he's 60 years old, he cannot handle the situation that he had a cancer, please let us know. No, because it's your duty to be truthful, and the patient is your first doorstep to tell everything. If patient tells you, I don't want to hear anything from you, I want my daughter to know everything and she can take a decision of mine, then you have to document and tell your daughter. But if your daughter is saying and patient is not in the picture and you don't know what the patient want, you cannot resist yourself from telling the truth to the patient until unless patient says, no, I don't want to hear. So you can respect the doctor's request, but you cannot obey the doctor's request. You cannot follow those things because it's your obligation as a healthcare provider in Canada. So this type of balance is very important in us, in our practice. After that, in Canadian healthcare, it is deemed appropriate in most situations for a physician of one gender to care for patients of the other gender. Nevertheless, in some cultures, this is deemed inappropriate and perhaps forbidden. Uh, while there is no requirement for absolute accommodation of gender based requests to change physicians, it is both culturally sensitive and prudent to make reasonable efforts to address the patient's request to be treated by the physicians of the gender of their choice. This is a very common kind of scenario you can look after. There is a patient who is male and there is a physician who is female. Patient is having some kind of issues with their genital region, with their maybe anal region, and they says, oh, I'm not feeling comfortable to be seen by you, I don't want to share the information. Before you request that your colleague who is male that okay, go see a patient, you have to try your best and reasonable efforts to address the patient's request. And even you can say the patient that I am in the same level of education and knowledge as of my colleague. There is no restriction for me to be seeing a patient who is having problems with the genital, who is a male, as compared to my colleague. You have to make a reasonable efforts before you just request that okay, this patient doesn't want to see me because of this XYZ reason, because of this gender, opposite gender. And then you can tell your colleague to let the patient to let the patient know that my colleague can come in. But you have to inform them that your knowledge, your practice, your license allow you to treat the people who are male, who are coming with some kind of issues which is not easily discussed. You have to make those reasonable efforts. So this is very important. You will not say, oh, patient doesn't want to see you, I'll ask my doctor XYZ who is a male, he'll come and see you maybe after 3 hours because he's not here and he has some patients. No, you have to make a reasonable choices, and as far as patient is okay with it, you can proceed. But if the patient is not, then yes, you have to make a request, but it's not something required to make an absolute accommodation. Like there is no absolute requirement. In group practice, when on-call duties including looking after the needs of the entire group patients and where physicians of both genders may cover call, discussing this issue with the patient is preferably done at the outset of the interaction so that there is sufficient time to make the alternatives arrangements. Consulting available policies for institute may also be helpful. If they are on call, there are male doctors, there's a female doctor, patient doesn't want to see you, you can still make an effort to do it, but you need to give them a sufficient time. Let them know that physician is not coming for next 2 hours because he is seeing another unit, he is seeing a multiple XYZ patient. So you have to make that discussions so that patient knows that we are not neglecting them, but we are trying our best to accommodate their request. Discussing this issue with the patient is preferably done at the outset of the interaction so that there is a sufficient time to make an alternative. If urgent or emergent care is required and a physician of the requested gender is not available, providing the empathic response, acknowledging the patient wishes, and providing an explanation to the nature of the call schedule will serve to explain why a physician of the requested gender is not available, because it is always possibility that the staff physicians may need to intervene in the care. It is generally inadvisable to ask a resident to take on the staff physician roles to address the gender concern. So let's suppose this is a very good question in a way that you are a resident, you are working on call, patient doesn't want to see you, patient wants to see the staff physicians who might be not available on the right now. You can try your best to explain the things, but at some point of time you have to ask the staff physician to come and address those things and intervene in care. Maybe she's of your same gender, but her level of providing the care will be more helpful to the physicians. in a way that they will know that okay, we don't have any choice and it is urgent or emergent situation. That will help the patient to take a decision. Some patients may refuse all proposed accommodation or alternative arrangements and simply choose to discharge patients against medical advice. In such circumstances, an informal refusal and discharge plan will be promoted safe care and help the patients make the decision. Outline the risk involving in refusing the care, suggest that the patient seek care elsewhere, and identify the signs and symptoms that would suggest or evolving worsening states, as well as when to seek care. Offer to continue to treat the patients until alternative care become available. Document the discussion in the patient's medical record. You may, after discussing the risk of discharge, considering asking the patient to sign a written acknowledgement that they may have been advised of the risk of discharge and refusing the further medical care. Some point of time, you also like patient is saying 100% no. What you will do? You will do whatever the patient want. You cannot say, oh, you are dying, I'm going to treat you, whatever your request, it doesn't matter to me. No, you have to respect it, but you have to maybe document a little lengthier things. You have to provide a lot of information to the patient. You need to make sure that patients understand the things. It does not just you put the information, and giving a written consent means you might give a teach back stuff that okay, patient should tell you whatever they understand. So that kind of things will be happy. But that's what I'm saying. When someone gives you a reason not to be seen by you, you have to provide your efforts, number one. Then you can make an arrangements as an alternative. Number three, you can involve your staff physicians. Number four, if they are still refusing, they want to go home, they don't want to see, you can still document things that you did your all the steps to make sure you provide the care to the patient according to their needs. Finding the right balance. Physician may not be obligated to provide absolute accommodation in all situations, but rather to reasonably accommodate cultural diversity. While physician may recognize that professional standards vary among countries and cultures, they must be aware of and to meet Canadian practice standards. Although it is laudable to endeavor to respect every patient's culture's background and plan care around the patient values, physician needs to strike the right balance between the respect of the culture and the provisions of competent care. That's what I'm saying. You have to make sure you're balancing things. You cannot just do one thing 100% and do other things zero. You have to make it 50-50. That's why this is saying finding the right balance. Meeting your professional obligation does not mean sacrificing respects of other patients' cultural traditions, beliefs, or wishes. If, for example, you receive a request to hide a diagnosis from the patient, you should explain to both the patients and the families why you need to inform the patients of the diagnosis. Additionally, strive to find the balance of offering to tell the truth and the full disclosure to a mentally capable, competent patient. Respectfully acknowledge the wishes of the families, but explain you have a legal and ethical duty to inform patients for medical conditions and the options of the treatment. The example which I just discussed about daughter and a father who is being diagnosed with a new cancer, that's absolutely apply on this number one. Determining whether the patients understand the risk and the benefits of not being fully informed about their conditions. Determining whether the patient understand it or no. Under Canadian law, patients are entitled to make their own decision. Even patient is not fully capable, mentally competent, you can still involve the patients in their care. You try your best to involve the patient as much as possible. If possible, speaking to the patient in private to ensure there is no one is coercing them into the decision. Sometimes there are some ways where you do not understand the family circumstances, but you need to understand that is the patient is aware about it or no. I will give you a very uncommon example that there are two brothers. They are family of each other. There is no one else, and one brother is diagnosed with the cancer, and other brother is healthy, and the financial things between them or the business and everything is divided, and if one is died for any reason, the second brother will get everything like the financial gain, right? So at this point of time, the healthy brother is trying to convince you not to tell my brother about the cancer, because they intentionally think that if he is not being treated, he might die in few years, then everything goes to the healthy brother, right? So that means you don't know that thing. You might feel, oh, the healthy brother is feeling very bad about his brother, he doesn't wanted him to be anxious about the medical condition or something. You don't know, you are not aware about their family circumstances. You don't have to assume. That's why speaking to a patient in privately is very important. That will help you to understand there might be some kind of a conflict between the families, but whatever the patient is telling you, we are trusting on that part. Considering the involvement of culturally brokers to facilitate your mutual understanding. A cultural broker is someone who can provide cultural explanation and context to the healthcare provider in order to help them identify the key issue and foster good communication. Cultural brokers means the leader, the person who can be a bridge between a patient and a physician. So that can also be helpful, but it is practically not every time applicable, but it can be helpful at some point of time. So we do have an option of using that part. As another example, in some cultures it is considered taboo to address issues of mental health, sexuality, HIV, cancer, resuscitation status. Nevertheless, the practice of medicine in Canada recognizes that questions about sexual orientations and other sensitive issues are appropriate when such issues are medically relevant to establish the diagnosis and treatment plan. I have talked about this in the previous videos in the boundaries. I believe that whenever we are talking about sexual orientations and the gender, we have to make sure that why we are asking, because it is important to establish the diagnosis, it is important to establish the treatment point. It is when we are asking someone is, do you have a partner, are you sexually active, for no reason, and they will feel like, why doctor is asking me the personal questions. But basically we are trying to make sure we are excluding their pregnancies before we give a treatment. So you just have to let them know that I'm trying to treat you for this XYZ condition, but I want to make sure you're not pregnant, because if you're sexually active, I can do a pregnancy test before I start it, or I can give you the counseling not to conceive in next few months or years, so that you can be treated, but you don't feel that if you get pregnant there will be a teratogenicity can happen. So these types of, like, explaining a single sentence would help them to understand, rather than just asking questions and not saying anything, and they will feel like, why doctor asked me this question. To decrease the chance of allegations of discrimination and to provide culturally safe care, provide an explanation for the reason of potentially sensitive questions. I think I just explained this part. Do not avoid addressing a certain aspects of the patient's health because you or your patient is culturally uncomfortable. No. Try your best to make it comfortable and let them know that you are comfortable of each and every kind of concerns which a patient is having. Strive to educate patients in a respectful and sensitive manner when patients' beliefs may lead them to make choices that may be detrimental to their health. You have to educate the patient as much as possible and in a very sensitive way. Aim to provide advice to patients and make decisions about treatment based on the sound medical grounds and principles. So this is also important. When you are providing the education, you are providing the advices, you are asking to make a decision about the treatment. That should sound like, if patient says, I don't know what to do, then you can explain more. Okay, if we go to this treatment, that might be give you a benefit of XYZ, but that will give a side effect. How does that sound to you? In terms of medical point of view, we go with this first step first, and then we further move on to see if there's a failure. So you are trying to give them advice, but trying to tell them to make their own decision. You don't have to take the decision until unless they say, doctor, do whatever you want to do. I don't know. So these are the things are very important, and I think cultural safety topic is important because sometimes, as in being an immigrant, we do have some beliefs that my decisions can be taken by my family. I don't need to take the decisions. But from a physician point of view, working in a Canada, I want my patient to know everything about themselves. I don't want to hide anything, right? So, and I want them to be involved into their decision making. So these are all the things are very important. I hope you like this video. Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about it? If you have any suggestion, any questions, let me know. Please subscribe to my channel. It will help me to grow, and I will keep updating more videos from good practice. Thank you so much.